bit of background. I used to be in corporate marketing for IT companies, but I became a chef at the age of 49. And in the last 10 years, I've had some interesting experiences, and this phrase kind of describes the last 10 years. If anybody recognizes it, it's from the film Field of Dreams. So if you get to watch it, it's about a bloke who has voices in his head. I don't have voices, but this kind of aptly describes what's happened. Today has been really through cooking. That's been my relaxation and enjoyment. As I said, my career started in the IT world. I then had the challenge of turning my love for food and cooking into a job. And for 2 years I did night school whilst holding down a day job, and got qualified with a professional diploma in catering, City and Guilds. So back in 2009 I started my business, my food business. That was a real challenge. I had this professional kitchen built, and actually it took me probably about 2 days before I opened the door and went into it, because it was such a big step. So psychologically I had to get over that threshold before I actually started. So I remember that evening very well. This also leads to a list of sort of learnings that came out over the last 10 years, which I'll get to. I learnt over the first year what I was doing wasn't really where my business should be, so I changed direction, and that was because everybody was asking me, could I do catering? So I went from selling food in a market, or several markets, to getting into the catering side. I also did my own PR and marketing, and that eventually led to some work on BBC Radio Oxford. Alongside that, I got picked up and asked to do menus for a couple of bars and small restaurants and bistros in Oxford. One of the things I also had was creating a food festival in 10 weeks, which went on to win several tourism awards. And then I diversified again into teaching cookery courses. So designing and teaching cookery courses, and part of that was running a cookery school as well. And then the big end stop was last year with COVID. So my business, in every sense of the word, kind of disappeared, which was rather unfortunate. So the route to today now is working on what I have done in the past, but rethinking the business. And my next redirect is an online cookery school. So I'm using all of the courseware I created in the past. I'm developing ebooks, create a podcast, and build a new website to support that. So this has all happened over, as I say, since 2009. So it's covering maybe, well over 10 years. The challenges on the way, and these I think are applicable to anybody who's starting up or thinking about their new business. Okay, they're very specific, some of them to catering, but I think they're the same for any small business or small entrepreneur. So deciding on what to cook, well, deciding on what your product is, how that fits in the world of health and safety and all the rest of it. That's applicable again in every business. Building your websites, taking yourself online, doing the marketing and so on. Somebody was talking about finding the products, well, finding ingredients. Again, that was an issue for me in the early days. And also managing expectations, not only with suppliers, but with customers as well. Finding staff, well, that has never gone away. If that started for me 9 years ago, when I started catering, that's an even bigger challenge now as we're coming out of the COVID situation. Learning how to deal with difficult people. That's always been a difficult one when you're forward facing with customers directly. And I've only ever had one really bad situation over the last 10 years, so I guess I've been lucky. The other thing is, whilst your business may be geared to a certain product set, logistics play the big part. I kind of learned very quickly that my business was 20% cooking, the rest was everything else. So you do find that whilst you're doing what you want to do, there are loads of other things you have to do. Challenges, trying to do 2 bits of catering in one day, probably wasn't my smartest move, but there we go. A good accountant is always helpful. Maintaining cash flow became tricky at times, but that's the way it goes. Sticking to a plan, but being prepared to change. So realizing sooner rather than later that something is working. That's one of the key things that I found also a challenge in the early days. And then also I used to worry about details, but when I thought about it, nobody else would worry about them. So why should I worry about them? So you kind of need to back off sometimes when it comes to the level of detail you get concerned about. I think for 10 years, these are 10 lessons that I've learnt, and I wouldn't say it was one a year, but it probably fits quite well. Act, do not wait. By all means, plan and build your business, but make sure you're acting as well, because you can get into the paralysis of planning rather than actually getting a business built. Rely on your own skills, all your skills, and you'll probably find you had some that you didn't know you had. So that's another good one to remember. Set your goals high and aim for high standards in what you're doing. You won't always get there, but it helps keep your level of performance up to as high a level as possible. As I say, flexibility is important. Remember the customer, listen to them and be responsive to them. And focus on your customer, not your prices. And this was talked about earlier, I think, in the first presentation. Do not underprice yourself. It's very easy to do. I've seen an example of it recently, and I don't understand how people get to that position. So it is a difficult one to know how to price yourself, but don't underprice yourself by any means. Think about quality and the value to the customer. Again, that's been said already this evening. Recognize where needed that you can't do everything. Find somebody who can support you. So whether it's in a supplier, whether it's in a customer, whether it's somebody locally, whether it's your next door neighbor, they may be able to add value to what you're doing. So build some networks and make sure you pull on or use those networks as much as you possibly can. And that really leads to building strong relationships with the suppliers. I've had, until I moved recently to the Isle of Wight, I've had strong relationships with about half a dozen suppliers who've basically managed all that I needed. Everything else I've got from, odd little suppliers from time to time, but you need to build the strong relationships with your suppliers to your business. And finally, I've always bought local as much as I possibly could. And that's one of the things that I found really the biggest thing, because unless you really are trying to go for a big wide market nationally or even Europe or wider, you are looking to work within sort of 30, 40, 50 miles, and that's your catchment area. Make sure you're leveraging off relationships within that area. So I don't know whether that's useful. I hope it is. It's certainly something that helped me when they asked me to do this. Some idea of the sorts of things that I've done. Teaching at the Wight CookerySchool for one, that was one, and I managed that school for 6 months or so. Wallingford Food Festival, and then me teaching online in my kitchen, BBC Radio Oxford, and the rest is just a very small sample of some of the things that I do. But I'm very happy to talk to anybody. If you want to email me or have any questions, happy to do so. And that's it really. That's what I got up to in the last 10 years.